There he is! Oh, he's giant, dude! Oh my gosh!
Lots of large and mysterious creatures lurking under Lake Michigan, but it's what's washed up on the lakeshore today that's got everyone talking.
Looks like a very old fossil or something, doesn't it?
There are countless mysteries in the world that we may never fully understand, and the oceans, which cover over 3/4 of our planet, are among the greatest of them. If you've ever checked how much of the ocean we've actually mapped, you'd know it's only about 6%. That's a small fraction, which means we're still discovering some truly terrifying creatures that lurk below. From fish that don't even look like fish to a strange creature spotted in Persian Gulf, here are 20 terrifying sea monsters that actually exist. Number 20. Anomalocaris. For this first one, I'm going to cheat a little bit because this isn't really about a creature that actually exists but rather was a creature that actually existed. I'm talking about an ancient creature to begin things, not one that you may expect to be monstrous based on its size. The Anomalocaris, as it was called, was a creature that lived in a part of prehistory that goes far beyond what you're thinking. This was not a creature that existed in the age of dinosaurs. Instead, it was one that lived well before the age of dinosaurs. Long before certain animal species would grow to large sizes, the world was still kind of growing up. In the whole Cambrian period, which was about 500 million years ago, one of the biggest apex predators was the Anomalocaris, and it was only about a meter long. I should give you some context for just how different the world was back then if the apex predator of the ocean was a creature barely over a meter long at maximum. Some even think the average of this creature was half of that, but either way, it had a unique body shape that helped it dominate the water. Some scientists have even gone so far as to say that it might be the first apex predator in history. It chased after its prey with undulating flaps on its sides and a large fan-shaped tail, grabbed them with large, spiky arms, and bit into them with a square, tooth-lined mouth. Tracked prey with large, stalked eyes. So, yeah, the thing was the original monster of the depths, and technically we don't have anything like it in today's world, or at least not that we know of. Either way, it was part of a history we should remember fondly, if for no other reason than this was a time when monsters were small, and they weren't all as small as we'd like them to be nowadays. Number 19. Japanese spider crab. I will fully admit that the next entry isn't monstrous in terms of its danger, and it probably couldn't kill you. I'm not even sure how the Japanese spider crab would be able to kill someone in the first place. But the reason it's on this list is because it's the biggest crab species in the world in terms of its length. There's no real reason why that happened. That might sound mean at first, but when you compare the length of the Japanese spider crab to others, it really feels like this one is the odd one out. The other mega crabs out there, like the coconut crab, are large because of bulk, not length. So you may ask, how big is this crab lengthwise? The record set by them is 3.7 meters from leg end to leg end. That's important to note because if you look at its core body, it's not really all that big by comparison. Yet the legs have a really, really long reach. It may be weird, and it freaked Japanese fishermen out when they first saw it. In fact, when they did first see it, they nicknamed it Crabzilla, and it's not hard to see why. But despite its size, it's hardly the most aggressive creature in the ocean. In fact, it prefers to blend into the depths so predators don't find it, and it has a hard exoskeleton to deter predators from sinking their teeth in. Yet you can't help but look at the thing and say that it's a monster because there's really no other crab like it. It's not unlike what happened when the first Komodo dragon was discovered. That's a lizard, but it far outscopes any lizard you may know. Number 18. Stingrays. After what I just put you through with that last one, I thought I'd give you a more realistic one for the next entry. While some of you may not think of stingrays as being monsters, they are creatures you don't want to mess with unless you want a barb inside your body. We'll begin with one way that stingrays are monster-like. They have bodies that not many other creatures in the ocean have. They feature flat bodies that move in unique ways, almost like they're flying through the water. In fact, they've been the inspiration for many things, including Pokemon. The biggest stingray ever caught was a freshwater stingray about 4 meters long and weighing over 300 kilograms. That's a really big stingray. The reason most people would say this species is monstrous is because of its tail. Their tail is often sharp, barbed, or serrated depending on the species, and they're really good at sticking it to their prey where they want to. That's honestly one of the biggest dangers. It's not like a sword or knife that cuts into you. It's a literal jab that will pierce inside and cause serious problems depending on where it hits. The fact that some of these stingray species have venom in their tails doesn't help matters either. They sometimes reside in freshwater areas or hide in the ocean's mud, where people can accidentally step on them and get stabbed. A stingray took the life of legendary conservationist Steve Irwin when its tail spike punctured his heart. So, never let anyone tell you that these creatures cannot be deadly. Number 17. Blobfish. One may argue that the blobfish is not monstrous on its own but is instead the byproduct of what humans have done to it. You see, many creatures on this list live in the deepest parts of the ocean. That's no secret. The catch is that humanity has wondered so much about how these creatures survive down there that they've tried to capture some of them and bring them to the surface. Down in its natural habitat, the blobfish actually looks quite different, with a more defined shape that allows it to blend seamlessly with the rocky seafloor. It relies on the extreme pressures of the deep ocean to keep its body intact and structured, essentially maintaining a normal, fish-like form. Unfortunately, without that intense pressure, its body transforms into a gelatinous blob, unable to hold its shape. This transformation has become a sort of sad emblem of human interference in deep-sea ecosystems. While many people laugh at the ugly blobfish, it's a reminder of how creatures can drastically change when taken from their natural environment. The blobfish, as it's officially known, was one such victim of this practice. When it was brought to the surface, it was unable to handle the lack of pressure from the ocean and, as a result, became a rather ugly blob, hence the name. It's really sad that we basically turned it into this monster ourselves. Number 16. East Pacific Red Octopus. Here's another creature that's not something you should directly fear, but it's still no less monstrous when you realize how capable and frightening of a hunter it can be. The East Pacific Red Octopus is not the biggest fish in the sea, especially compared to the rest of its kind. In fact, it's not even a meter long at maximum length, and its body is said to be multiple times smaller than its surrounding tentacles. So, what makes it so monstrous that it deserves to be on this list? Well, that would be what it does when it finds its prey. First off, the East Pacific Red Octopus is a generalist predator, meaning it goes after all kinds of prey versus just one kind. That's important to note because it also means that if it likes something, it's going to eat it, and that's a scary thought. But what's even scarier is what happens when it catches certain kinds of prey. First, it begins changing colors to signal its victory, proving that animals definitely have an ego. Then, it drills a hole through the shell of its prey to deliver venom and more easily open it up. That's right, the octopus has the ability to drill into shells and then inject its prey with venom, so it can't resist further destruction. That's scary in all the ways that matter because animals shouldn't be able to drill into other animals, yet this octopus does that regularly. So, maybe we should all be grateful that we don't have a shell. Now it's time for today's topic. In the mysterious depths of the Persian Gulf, where modern skyscrapers rise along ancient waters, a team of fishermen embarked on what they thought would be a typical day. Known for its bustling maritime trade and rich sea life, the Persian Gulf held no mysteries for these seasoned men, or so they thought. As the sun's first rays danced across the water, a massive shadow drifted into view, capturing the attention of one alert crew member. At first, they thought it was a large piece of debris or perhaps the carcass of a whale. But as they moved closer, their excitement turned to dread. Floating just beneath the surface was an enormous creature unlike any they'd ever seen. Its skin was rough and dark, almost reptilian, covered in scars that hinted at a life spent battling the ocean's unknown horrors. A mouth filled with razor-sharp, backward-curving teeth gaped wide, as though waiting to trap unsuspecting prey. One fisherman, shaking yet determined, took out his camera to capture proof of the creature. As he focused the lens, the creature's massive eye flicked open, locking onto them with a haunting, intelligent stare. A deep, rumbling growl resonated from its chest, sending shivers through the men. Without warning, the beast began to sink back into the shadowy depths, leaving ripples in its wake. The fishermen were left in stunned silence, with a few blurry photos and a story that no one would believe. What lurked beneath the Persian Gulf surface that day remains an enigma, an ancient giant that vanished as swiftly as it appeared, leaving behind only mystery and fear. Number 15. Sea Cucumber. Now, we know that on the surface, the sea cucumber doesn't seem like the most monstrous thing on this list. But trust me when I say that it has a reason for being here. That reason is that not only does it secrete a toxin that can be harmful if you touch it, but it also has a very disgusting trait that has made it infamous. In fact, some species of sea cucumbers can eject sticky, toxic threads along with their organs, effectively entangling and poisoning the predator at the same time. This self-defense mechanism, called evisceration, is so extreme that the sea cucumber has to spend weeks regenerating the lost organs afterward. While it's certainly a last resort, this survival tactic is surprisingly effective in scaring off larger predators. Interestingly, the sea cucumber can choose which organs to eject, almost like a sacrifice to ensure its own escape. The toxins in their bodies can also act as a natural deterrent, making them an unpleasant meal even if a predator gets past the initial horror show. Specifically, if it thinks a predator is approaching, it will literally hurl its organs at them in an attempt to get out alive. There are some toxins in those organs, but frankly, it's just disgusting that they would do this. They should probably have some class. Number 14. The Pacific Black Dragon. Almost anything that has the word dragon in its name has to be at least some kind of monster, right? I mean, after all, dragons were created to be some of the most powerful beasts in all of fantasy. Fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, the Pacific black dragon does fit into that model. This is a deep-sea fish that is not only frightening to look at, but can also be quite the fierce predator, just like a dragon. They are ambush predators with dark black bodies, and even their stomachs are coated with black tissue to block out any light produced by bioluminescent animals they eat. So they hunt in the dark and go to great lengths to ensure they stay there. This dragon knows what it's doing, but thankfully, they're only about 60 centimeters at max, and thus don't pose much of a threat to humans. However, I wouldn't recommend testing that theory out. Number 13. The Goblin Shark. Look, you may think there are going to be a lot of sharks on this list because of their natural and monstrous nature, but you'd be wrong. We're casting a wide net here, but I needed to include the Goblin Shark for a few reasons. The first reason is that this creature is scary from an age standpoint, that age being about 125 million years old. No, they're not individually that old, but they're the last living members of a family that dates back to that era, which makes them living fossils. The reason that's scary is that it raises the question of what else from that period of time may still be swimming around in the oceans today. The other reason it's on this list is because of its looks and abilities. First off, it doesn't look like any other shark you've seen before, and it's pretty scary looking. But when you hear about what its mouth can do, you may well freak out. Not unlike a certain horror movie creature, the Goblin Shark can protrude its mouth outside of its head to bite down on its prey. That's right, it can go full-on xenomorph to get its prey, and that is wrong on so many levels. Thankfully, because of the depths of the ocean where it tends to reside, you'll likely never see it. But if you do, just go in the other direction. It's probably better that way. Number 12. Zombie worms. Before you go freaking out, you should know I'm not talking about actual zombie worms or ones that could cause you to become a zombie if they got inside you. I mean, we're not at the last of US stage of the world yet. Instead, I'm talking about a rather freaky type of worm discovered by scientists, known to eat the bones of the dead, specifically the bones of aquatic animals like whales. There are many elements to this story that are both fascinating and scary. First, these worms can easily exist at 3,000 meters below sea level, which is pretty deep. Secondly, they can be either the size of an eyelash or as long as your finger. While it's not all that scary on its own, it should also be noted that these worms typically come in legions. Scientists found that in every whale carcass they examined, the worms were there. It's honestly a little mysterious how the worms end up on the bones, but we might figure that out later. It's also scary to find out that males of the species are known as kamikaze because they literally try to find females, mate with them, and then die when they run out of energy. If only actual zombies died after running out of energy. Number 11. The Atoya. I'm about to hit you with back-to-back worm posts, so you better be ready for that. Once again, I'm going back to prehistoric times to discuss the Atoya, a worm that was about 15 centimeters in length at max and was actually a predator. So yeah, this was an aggressive worm. These worms were part of a group called priapulids, known for their fierce feeding habits and powerful proboscis, which helped them latch onto unsuspecting prey. Atoya also had tiny, sharp teeth lining its mouth, allowing it to grip and hold its prey securely as it dragged it into its burrow. Evidence from fossil records shows that they weren't picky eaters, often preying on anything small enough to pass by, including other worms. Their hunting method was incredibly effective, especially in the nutrient-rich waters of the Cambrian period, where they thrived. It's believed that their ambush strategy was one of the earliest examples of such complex hunting behavior in the animal kingdom. Wasn't there a movie about this kind of thing that starred Kevin Bacon? Regardless, what these worms do is make burrows in the shape of a U and then wait for prey to come just above the burrow. Then they'll lash out to catch them. That's pretty scary when you think about it. Again, they weren't the biggest of worms, but to think they were once willing to get aggressive in order to get food, well, we should all be glad they've evolved ever since then. Number 10. The Stonefish. I don't need to wax poetic about the stonefish for the very simple reason that this fish is a straight-up killer if you let it be. It's legitimately one of the most venomous things in the world, and it can absolutely kill a person if the antivenom that was developed isn't administered quickly. The worst part about the monstrous stonefish is that it's one of many breeds of aquatic creatures that prefer the act of camouflage rather than being an active predator. With its rough, rock-like skin, the stonefish can blend perfectly with coral reefs, sand, and rocky seabeds, making it nearly invisible to both prey and unsuspecting humans. This master of disguise remains completely still, looking like an ordinary rock until its next meal swims a little too close. Stonefish are equipped with venomous spines that can penetrate even thick wetsuits, meaning even cautious divers are at risk. The venom it injects causes extreme pain, swelling, and even paralysis, adding to its reputation as one of the ocean's deadliest creatures. They allow the prey to come to them, and then they use their venomous spines to do the rest of the work. But that's where it puts humans in such danger. it's going to blend into the environment, and then someone will accidentally step on it, getting injected with its venom, and you'll be in pain until you get that antivenom in the end. Number 9. Sea pig. Now, there's one entity known as the sea pig that can be quite monstrous in its own right. For example, they can exist basically 5,000 meters below sea level, and that is way, way down there, yet they live there just fine. Their gelatinous, almost translucent bodies are perfectly adapted to the crushing pressure of the deep sea, allowing them to move across the ocean floor with surprising ease. Remarkably, they walk along the seabed on small, tube-like legs that give them a rather creepy, floating appearance as they scavenge for food. Sea pigs also emit a faint bioluminescent glow, which is thought to help them find each other in the darkness, ensuring that the herd stays together. They have sensory structures on their bodies that help them detect food sources from afar, particularly the remains of decaying animals. Secondly, they're known to feed on dead whales in the ocean, something you're going to learn about coming up in this video. Finally, they're known to embody the strength in numbers motif by having groups of hundreds as they move along the ocean floor, so they're never alone. That makes them quite the sight when you see their swarm. Number 8. The Frilled Shark. Are you ready for the last shark entry in this video? It's not the great white or even the hammerhead. It's a frilled shark. And what makes this one more worthy than the others? Well, it's not about worthiness so much. I mean, they're not Thor yet. Instead, I'm talking about some truly monstrous tendencies that this shark has. For example, like the Goblin Shark, the frilled shark is a living fossil, and you can tell that rather easily by the way its body looks and how it moves. It doesn't have many of the typical fins that sharks usually have. In fact, its body is known to be more like an eel than anything else, and this carries over into how it moves. Instead of swimming like a shark, it wiggles and moves its body like an eel so that it can get closer to its prey, lunge at them, and then swallow the prey whole. In fact, they're so confident in their abilities that they'll even go after bigger fish than themselves and try to swallow them whole as well. Here again, we have a case of history delivering something to the present that isn't exactly normal by our standards, and it's truly freaky as a result. Number 7. Ntia. When you have to deal with an entire species of scary animals, then you know you're in trouble. Though ironically, the Ntia, also known as ribbon worms, aren't the ones that would immediately strike fear into you when you see them. That's because you're not going to see them all that easily. After all, they are really, really small. Some of them can be only a few millimeters in length, and they can even live in the deepest parts of the ocean, so they're not exactly a threat to humans. However, because of their carnivorous nature, they can also use their small bodies to get into almost anywhere, which includes the bodies of their victims. One time, one of these worms got into a host and slowly began to eat the eggs that the host laid, equating to about 50% of those eggs just on its own. Due to its makeup, the worms are also able to break off into pieces and then completely regrow their bodies, as in each one of the fragments was regrown into a full-on body. That makes these worms really hard to kill, which is pretty scary. Number 6. The tasseled Gong shark. Now, I do have one more shark to talk about, but for the record, this is yet another atypical shark that you may not be expecting. The tasseled Gong definitely will have you questioning what other kinds of sharks may be out there in the depths, given what this one looks like. In this case, the tasseled Gong is one of a proud line of carpet sharks. What are those? Well, those are sharks that will line the bottom of a certain ocean place, blend in with their environment, and then snack on smaller fish that are dumb enough to get close to them. The Gong's body is covered in fleshy lobes and tassels, which mimic seaweed and coral, providing perfect camouflage on the ocean floor. Unlike most sharks, it doesn't need to chase down its prey. Instead, it waits patiently, mouth wide open, until something swims close enough. These sharks even have tiny projections around their mouths that resemble small fish, acting as bait to lure in unsuspecting prey. Once a fish gets close, the Gong can strike with lightning speed, pulling its prey into its trap-like jaws. And as you can see, it's really good at blending in, which makes it really good at catching unsuspecting prey. So not only is it a shark, it's a very smart shark. And what's more terrifying than that? That's all from the depths of the ocean, where certain monsters do dwell, and you should be grateful that you don't have to deal with them every day. Number 5. The anglerfish. There is so much scary stuff to talk about with the anglerfish that we could very easily dedicate much of this list to it. But for now, I'll focus on the main things. For example, the anglerfish is a deep-sea fish that lives in the midnight zone, meaning it's part of the ocean where natural sunlight doesn't reach. As such, the anglerfish developed a unique evolution via a protrusion that comes out of its head and lights up the ocean around it. Why is that scary? Well, it's not for itself. Instead, it uses that light to attract nearby fish. The fish will be drawn to the light as they're not used to it, and then slowly the angler fish will come in and then chomp down. That's how it feeds on the regular. And if you're curious, yes, that's the fish we saw in Finding Nemo in that one scene. Happy feeling gone? Oh, and if you want to know something even more freaky, the big angler fish that you see are females. And where are the males? Well, they're minuscule and literally have to fuse themselves to the female so that they can mate. There's just so much that's wrong with this fish. Number 4. Flower urchins. When it comes to the more hidden monsters of the underwater world, you can't help but look at the flower urchin. They're a creature that just looks like a kind of shriveled flower or mushroom when you approach it. But if you are to provoke it, well, it's going to hurt you. Not unlike sea urchins, which could also have been on this list, they have spines they use to prick, prod, and break off in your body. So if you get hit with one, you're going to be hurting, and that goes double if you have a lot of them at once. If you're unfortunate enough to step on one, you can actually be bitten by it and have venom injected into your body. Now, while it is unlikely to kill you, it is likely to cause you a whole lot of pain. One man described it as actually feeling the toxin going through his bloodstream as it slowly paralyzed parts of his body. He didn't die, but his face was paralyzed for about 6 hours, and had it been in a worse position, it could have led to him not being able to breathe. Yeah, you better be careful out there when these urchins are around. You may end up living longer. Number 3. Chimera. The fish known as the chimera is technically a kind of living fossil given its ancestry, and it's closely related to sharks, which is why it technically looks and moves like one. But to be clear, they are not sharks. When you look at them, though, you may quickly realize that this fish doesn't exactly look like anything else out there. It almost looks like something a little bit supernatural, which is why many have dubbed it the ghost shark. Adding to its otherworldly charm, the chimera has a long, whip-like tail and cartilage-based skeleton, which make it more flexible and ghostly in movement. Its large, vacant eyes glow in the dim light of the deep ocean, adding to its eerie reputation. Chimeras also possess venomous spines on their dorsal fins, which they use to ward off predators lurking in the depths. These spines are a reminder that, while they look ethereal, they're well equipped for the dangers of their dark environment. Curiously, though, these fish actually prefer to live in the depths of the ocean, which is why many of you may not have heard of them. Found in the deep, dark depths of the ocean, these elusive fish have a specialized retractable jaw and can produce bioluminescent displays. But despite their ghostly appearance, they are not true sharks. They primarily feed on small invertebrates and are considered fascinating and mysterious in the underwater world, showcasing the diversity of life that thrives within the deep, deep sea. And it all just leaves you to wonder what else may be left out there to be discovered. Number 2. The ocean sunfish. How about another fish that's a monster simply because of how it looks? The ocean sunfish is quite literally one of the biggest bony fish in the world. Not only can it be 3.3 meters in length, but it can also weigh about 1,000 kilograms. So yeah, just imagine swimming through the ocean, and then this thing just so happens to swim right next to you. You'll be doing a double take for sure. Plus, you're not going to be able to miss it thanks to its thin body. It has a rather squished frame despite the mass that it's packing, which makes it stand out further in the ocean. Also known as the mola mola, it's a peculiar-looking fish that holds the title of the world's heaviest bony fish. It resembles a large floating disc with fins and can weigh up to 5,000 pounds. Despite its size, it's a gentle creature, feeding mostly on jellyfish. It has a unique habit of basking near the ocean's surface, warming itself in the sun. Known for its curious appearance and slow movements, it's a fascinating and peaceful giant of the seas that navigates the waters with an unusual charm, captivating marine enthusiasts worldwide. Number 1. The barrel eye fish. Sometimes, a monstrous fish isn't monstrous at all because of how it acts in the deep, but instead, it becomes monstrous because of how it looks pure and simple. An example would be the barrel eye fish, as it's a fish with a transparent head. Yes, the top part of the fish's head is transparent, and that is pretty freaky. But what's even more bizarre is that this transparent dome protects its incredibly sensitive eyes, which are shielded from the jellyfish stings and other hazards it encounters while hunting. These tubular eyes are so specialized that they can rotate within the transparent head, allowing the fish to scan both above and around it without moving its body. It's also believed that the barrel eye fish's peculiar design helps it conserve energy by keeping its eyes trained upward, minimizing unnecessary movement in the near-freezing waters. The transparency of its head likely also helps it avoid detection by predators, blending into the darkness of the deep sea. The green tint of its eyes helps filter any sunlight that does reach its depths, allowing it to detect the faintest bioluminescence emitted by its prey. But why does it look that way in the first place? Well, the answer is that, not unlike other fish on this list, it lives within the midnight zone, so light is not prevalent where it's at. The transparent head works perfectly with its upward-facing eyes, which it uses to literally look up and see silhouettes of any kind of predators that may be lurking above. Yes, it's freaky looking, but it's also a fish that uses its form to help it to stay alive, and that's something to be respected. Which of these sea monsters gave you the biggest scare, and which one would you actually be up for seeing in person? Or maybe there's another sea creature you think should have made the list. Let me know all about it in the comments below. Check out the other cool videos on the screen, and I'll see you next time.